A little backstory on the Saw Viper. Year was 1990. He was purple. He had a helmet with a green visor. He quickly became one of my very favorite Cobra figures, but not only because he was like cool looking and different looking, but because the weapon he had was just comically large. So that's why I'm excited today to unbox, review, give you my thoughts on this Saw Viper from the G.I. Joe Classified series. What number is this one? This is 147, and there's a couple things that I'm excited about. One, the helmet is removable this time, and two, he looks like a big, giant bruiser compared to the Real American Hero version, which just kind of fit in with the rest of the line. The weapons, though, seem normal size. A little disappointed about that, but maybe the accessory kit will make up for that. You ready? Let's unbox him. We got him out of the packaging. This is a hefty figure. Already I can tell there is a ton of plastic here. And this is the part you don't see in the box, this giant long ammo chain to the side. While it's not the same as a machine gun that is the same size as the figure, I think it's a good start. Would you look at that, when I'm getting this out, the chainsaw on his main blaster is already kind of bent and warped. So here we have the figure. I'm gonna put his tiny little knife where it fits on the back of his belt there. That way I'm not gonna lose this thing dropping it. It is just a solid black piece of plastic. If that falls on the floor here, I'm gonna be picking that up for a long time. So, a couple things. This is a beefy figure, like I suspected. However, now this collar seems reminiscent of Tripwire from the G.I. Joe team. It's a little different because we can just remove it right away. I don't think the Tripwire one was part of the vest. This is kind of separate, but there are some weird little, like, I guess straps that hang on the outside of it that feel like they should have been wrapped around the vest. I get that they probably wanted to have this a removable feature, but I don't think you would need those little straps on the outside kind of going onto the shoulders a little bit. It just seems like an added detail that didn't go as planned. Because as it stands, like, it really doesn't do anything for the figure. It just flops around a little bit. But maybe if we put the helmet on, maybe that'll help stabilize everything. But I do want to give a cool little shout out to the comms unit. This is the helmet that I remember seeing on the pegs at Target or Toys R Us, wherever I probably found the original one, that stuck out to me. That green visor over the purple is such a bold choice, even back then. And oh yeah, this looks great. Oh, I really like this. Take a look at the helmet on top of everything. It stabilizes the collar. It locks the head in place. We're not going to get a whole lot of movement there, but I think that's the point of having such a big, bulky, armored Cobra unit. You're not going to get a lot of movement there. I would assume that this is a very advanced piece of technology where you get a heads-up display of what's around you. If we wanted to make this look a little more, I guess, original, we could remove that collar and we could then put the helmet on. So from there, we do get a little better range of movement. And you know what, the head, I would say that for a G.I. Joe Classified figure, it's been hit or miss lately. I'd say that's pretty good. I think the helmet helps with the eye line because you don't see the eye line and you get the sense, or at least it alludes to the fact that he can look up a little farther than possibly he is. Now let me see. Yeah, that is, the helmet helps for sure. Because here, if we just take a look, you can see this is as far back as his head goes naturally. And again, with the eyes, we connect with eyes, and that's the whole bit there. But let's put them back together. I really like this classified upgrade. This is the first thing I like about this figure already, is how the armor is so well integrated with the memorable, the very standout helmet of this Cobra figure. We have a lot of armor on this guy. So as I go through and pose him, my expectations are very low in terms of what he can do. So first, let's raise some of the shoulders, and it's a stiff joint to begin with. There we go. This one a little looser, but okay, we have a decent T-pose. There is a butterfly joint here that is working a little bit. We're not going to get, again, a huge range of motion because we have this flak jacket, or I guess bulletproof, bomb-proof vest obstructing the movements back and forward a little bit. Now, what about the torso? Not much, but again, we get a little something, just a little bit of something there. Now we're gonna, oh, okay, that elbow is really tight. This one isn't as tight. It is double jointed. I am running into the armor already. I can see that this is very limited by the armor. The legs, that isn't too bad. Again, we're working with a bulky figure. My expectations were way low. I would say that they didn't surpass them, but there were some moments where I was pleasantly surprised. I am going to worry a little bit about these shoulder pads over time. I've noticed that some of my G.I. Joe figures, they will droop down, gravity, all that kind of stuff. There is just the single band around the bicep, so it isn't all that well put in place. And the reason for that is because then we will get the shoulder raises and things like that. But again, the left side is just a lot stickier than the right. There we go, we freed it up a bit. Drop hips, and is there a boot cut? There is no boot cut here. Wow, okay, so they sculpted in some details for the boots, and we do not have a boot swivel at all. It's time to get the accessories, because part of what makes the Saw Viper so cool was the accessory loadout. Let's start with his pistol. Does this remove? I don't think any parts remove on the pistol, but he does have a holster on his right side, so we will slot that in. We already slotted in the knife that sits on the back of the character. Now I want to put in the backpack. I feel like this backpack is an ammo backpack because there is a spot at the bottom. I noticed that there's a spot at the bottom, hard to see, but it looks like the ammo belt, that giant ammo belt, will feed into it. That backpack went in really nice. That is a solid connection. If it were any more restrictive, I don't know how we could do that, because if you look at that, I can't even move his head back a little bit more because we have that handle, that carry handle in the back that sits nearly just right on the back of his helmet. So one of the cool things here I noticed is that there is another peg on the backpack, and there is a port at the bottom of his weapon. So I'm thinking this can just probably go in there. Yeah, just something like that. I don't know if that's the proper way of doing it, but it is a place that you can stash this thing. Now, how do we have this guy hold it? I'm having a difficult time getting this weapon in his hand. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to take a break. I'm going to have to figure this out. We'll see what happens with the Saw Viper. Well, I am glad I took some time to figure out this character a little more over at the bench, because a couple things became clear to me. One, he has a thigh swivel. So when I said he didn't have a boot swivel, he doesn't, but he's got a thigh swivel, which helps. It helps. Any little bit for this guy helps, because this weapon is extraordinarily difficult to get in his hands and use. It's the limited mobility that's going to be the most difficult to contend with when we're talking about our Saw Viper. I was able to get it, but I don't think that there are any more possible combinations of how I could configure him so he can hold his big, giant, heavy weapon. You'll notice that I socketed the chainsaw at the bottom of it, which I thought was for the peg in the back. It's really not. But this connection isn't solid at all. This feels like it could fall out at any given time. Speaking of other things falling out, when I was trying to put his hand onto the grip handle is just clamped onto this big, giant, heavy weapon, and that unclipped a few times. I'm not quite sure if I got the ammo belt correct for this character, so I'm going to try and play around with it a bit more, maybe swap the hands that he's holding the heavy weapon in. But ultimately, the connection to the backpack feels very solid. The connection to the weapon doesn't feel solid, but there's something that I wanted to try on camera here, so I'm going to unsocket that. You see how easy that was to get. And I just want to remove this. I want to remove the ammo box. And what I can do now is I can feed this through, and I'm guessing that this, yeah. Okay, yep, I got it from this side here. So that does feed better, but now I have this ammo box to do something with. I got some mixed feelings about this guy, so here are some of my final thoughts. There is so much that the classified Saw Viper does right. The first is making him a more imposing character. Putting the extra armor, the bomb-proof, the bulletproof armor, whatever you want to call it, is a way to bulk up the figure. The other piece, the helmet, which is just the signature look of the Saw Viper, looks incredible. It works so well over all of the other layers. There are shades of purple that break up the look of this figure. There are some dark purples, there are some lighter purples. It all looks very good to be capped off by the menacing looking green visor helmet. And there's the ability to make this a troop builder. You can remove the helmet, you can take off the collar, you can put the helmet on without the collar, you could probably take off the vest. You could not have any helmet on. It is a very versatile figure that allows you to do multiple things to bulk up the rest of your Cobra army. But when we have a troop builder, we also have a loadout. And this is the part where I feel so conflicted about it. The main weapon for the Saw Viper, giant two-handed machine gun. It has some really cool elements, but the accessories for the accessory, namely the underneath chainsaw, doesn't feel well socketed in at all. And there doesn't really feel like anything that I could do to make it a more solid connection without personally modifying it myself. But even if I do modify it, it still is bent and warped, and I might have to heat it up to try to straighten it out a little bit if I don't want it to look like it is some kind of wobbly chainsaw. But when all the pieces come together in a way that you can finally finagle them, it does look like a really cool figure. There is no denying, I feel like this still looks like a really cool figure. It's just getting him to that point is a little bit cumbersome. Even though I give this guy a pass for being a relatively difficult to pose figure because he is a heavy weapons figure, what unfortunately doesn't get the pass is the weapons and all of the stuff that requires a more nimble figure to finesse. I could remove all of the armor on this Saw Viper and it would likely do that. However, I feel like that would be doing this character a disservice because this is how he was advertised in the box, more or less. To sum it all up, I love the look of this character. I think he's really cool looking, but he was just very difficult to put together, and some of the finer details, some of the accessories are fiddly. You need to finesse them a little bit. And if you want to know more about G.I. Joe classified figures as they release, as I get them, because those are two separate things, I talk a lot about G.I. Joe Classified, other 6-inch scale action figures as well. I also talk about things pop culture related, figurines, collectibles, and blasters. Anything action toy related, you gotta stay tuned at the Ri-Fi channel. And to do that, you need to hit that subscribe button. Bonus points if you hit a like, and extra bonus points if you leave a comment telling me what you think about the Saw Viper. Am I way off the mark that he is a very difficult to configure figure, or should I just appreciate how cool he looks? But that's all I know about our Saw Viper. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.